the morning to ya lads and lassies. It is St. Patrick's Day today, so I wanted to read a story about a leprechaun. This is called Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Do you know what the word clever means? If somebody is clever, do you know what that means? That they're smart, but also quick to understand things. And they also think outside the box a little bit. They don't just take the regular answer. They come up with something interesting or different. They're clever. So in our story, the clever one is Tom. Clever Tom and the leprechaun. Now, what do you already know about leprechauns? Do you know that they are little shoemakers for fairies? That's their job. Written and illustrated by Linda Shute. Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Oh, here's Clever Tom. Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Here's Clever Tom. One fine day, on Lady Day in the harvest, Tom Fitzpatrick took a ramble down the lane. Click, clack, he heard through the hedge. So Tom tiptoed closer to take a look. The clacking sound stopped when Tom peeped through the bushes. And in the shadows, what did he see? Why, a big gallon pitcher and a teeny tiny man with a brown leather apron and a three-cornered hat. There's the leprechaun. Up the small man climbed on his wee wooden stool and dipped his little piggin into the crock. Then he settled down with his full mug beside him to hammer on the heel of a fairy-sized shoe. By the powers, thought Tom, it's a leprechaun. If I catch him and scare him, he'll give me his gold. Since I'm a clever fellow, that should be simple. Before the sun sets, I'll have my fortune made. Okay, so we know that Tom is clever and that he wants the leprechaun's gold. Tom stared at the leprechaun and tried not to blink. He knew that if he looked away, the old man would escape. Then he crept up quite near and tipped his hat politely, saying, "Good day to you, neighbor. Blessings on your work." "Thank you kindly," said the small one, but he never looked up. He just kept on tapping at the headpiece of the brogue. Tom moved his hand closer while he smiled very sweetly and said, "Today's a holiday. You shouldn't have to work." The leprechaun frowned and answered Tom sharply, "If I do, that's my business and none of your own. Instead of pestering me, young man, you ought to be watching your father's fields. Look there, the cows have broken into the oats. See, they're knocking the corn all about." Cows in the cornfield? Tom's head started turning. What would you tell him right now? Would you say, "No, he's tricking you"? Remember, we just read that you have to keep your eyes on the leprechaun or they disappear. So Tom is trying to keep his eyes on the leprechaun. Do you think those things are really happening in his field, or is this a trick? But he wasn't fooled by the leprechaun's trick. Quickly he grabbed the sly fellow and cried, "Now you're my prisoner. Tell me, where is your gold?" The leprechaun wiggled and twisted and whined, "I'm just a poor man." But Tom held him fast. "You and I both know you're lying," said Tom, and he made a fierce, frightening face. Finally, the leprechaun quit squirming and said, "Tom Fitzpatrick, you're too clever for me. I see you are after my buried treasure, so I'll have to show you where it is hid." What are you thinking about this leprechaun? Would he really give it up that easily? With his eye on the bitty man locked in his fist, Tom followed where the leprechaun led him. He traipsed over a hill and under some hedges, and through a ditch, and across the peat bog. At last, just when Tom feared he'd been hoodwinked. That's a great word, isn't it? Hoodwinked is another word for tricked. Can you say hoodwinked? Hoodwinked. That's kind of a fun word to say. Just when he feared he'd been hoodwinked, he found himself in a great field of weeds. "Dig here," said the leprechaun, pointing to a bush. "Deep under that bullion is where I put my gold." "Thunder Nation," said Tom. "I need to fetch my spade, but when I return I'll be lost. There are 40 acres of bullions here, and each plant looks just like the other." He's right. Each of these weeds looks exactly the same. So if Tom runs away to get his shovel and comes back, how will he know the right weed to dig under? What do you think he could do? Still watching the leprechaun, Tom figured out a plan. He tied his bright red garter on the bush. "Swear, you old rascal, that you won't take this off while I run back to get my spade." "That I will promise you," the little man said. Tom grinned, knowing leprechauns always kept their word. "Now, since I've shown you where my treasure is, I don't suppose you need me anymore." "Nope," said Tom. "My fortune's made. You may go, and good luck go with you." "Then goodbye, Tom Fitzpatrick," said the leprechaun. "May you do much good with what you find." Away ran Tom as fast as he could, figuring out how he'd spend the gold. Then he came back with his shovel in his hand, back to the field of bullions. What are you predicting? But when he got there, lo and behold, a garter just like his own was tied to each and every bush as far as he could see. That sneaky leprechaun, he kept his promise, didn't he? Remember, he promised not to take the garter off, the little red scarf. He said, "I won't take it off," and leprechauns always keep their promises. So, what did he do instead? He tied a red scarf on all of the weeds. Tom dug under the bullion where he thought he'd tied his garter, but nothing was buried under that bush, and so he dug under another. He dug to the east and he dug to the west, and still he found no treasure. The harvest moon rose as he dug to the north, and it set as he dug southward. And when the sun came up, Tom saw he'd dug 100 holes, and tired Tom Fitzpatrick knew he couldn't find that gold. So he gave up and headed for home. From then on, Tom always carried his spade, and he never stopped listening for a tapping in the field. Every chance he got, he'd tell how he nearly found the gold. "And since I'm a clever fellow," Tom would end his tale, "the next time I catch that leprechaun, I'll have my fortune made." Look, here's clever Tom as an old man, and he's talking. Maybe these are kids that live in nearby fields, or maybe they're his grandchildren. But what do we notice hiding behind the rock? Those leprechauns are sneaky, aren't they? What do you think this story should be called? Since we now know the ending, Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Do you agree with this title? Or maybe it should be Tom and the Clever Leprechaun. Boys and girls, I hope you have a terrific rest of your St. Patrick's Day. It's sunny here where I live, so that's a good thing. I know a lot of you are going to have some extra time today since you're not at school, and I was thinking you could make a leprechaun trap. Do you have any leftover toilet paper rolls or empty paper towel tubes? Or do you have any yarn or boxes or pipe cleaners? What could you use to lure that leprechaun in and trap him? All right, good luck with your traps, and I hope you liked the story.